Okay, I'd like to call the special meeting of the Ojai City Council to order. Welcome, everyone. If you'll all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call.
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, approval of agenda. We only have, 3 items here, so.
Move to approve.
We want to pull,
Yeah, except for the consent calendar,
pull the item that's on the consent
would
calendar,
have to be.
the climate resolution.
Okay, but that doesn't necessarily have to reorder it. We just still pull it from consent.
Yeah, just
Okay.
pull it, yeah.
Okay, if there's no objection, the agenda is approved as presented, with the exception that the consent calendar item on the climate emergency will be pulled for discussion. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, no objection, so ordered. Mr. City Manager, you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I can give just a brief introduction. The climate resolution is on tonight's agenda. It was over the last several meetings, advocates of declaring a climate emergency have been attending council meetings, asking the council to consider adopting a resolution. A few meetings back, council requested it be agendized for a future meeting, so we agendized it for tonight. There's a version in your packet that was prepared, but there are also now 2 alternate versions, one submitted by Councilmember Haney and one submitted by Mayor Pro Tem Francina. One note is that we did look into how many jurisdictions have declared a climate emergency. 822 jurisdictions in 16 countries have declared this climate emergency. So with that, that is all I have.
Okay, thank you, James. Okay, are there any questions of staff before we take public comment?
I just have one question, Mayor. 800 communities,
822 jurisdictions or local government agencies in 16 countries.
out of how many?
I don't have that number. It's, like.
I'm not trying to be cynical, I just,
Yeah.
so we're gonna
Yeah.
put a number out there, but we don't have that number and we can't
Yeah.
compare it to anything in our,
I'd say it's a minority at this point, although it's growing, so.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are 58 counties in California, and there are 474 cities, I believe, roughly.
He's talking worldwide,
I know, that's what, but I'm just giving you an
Right.
order of magnitude here, if you want to compare.
right?
Yeah, and
A quick question for staff.
Sure?
Has the city attorney had a chance to look at the latest version that came out this afternoon?
The city attorney has not looked
Okay.
at the latest
Okay,
version.
thank you.
Okay, we have,
okay, I just want to add a comment to your response, in response to your question, how many cities. The purpose is to mobilize every city and to create awareness that humanity is in a climate emergency. And we want to, from my perspective, we want to join with other cities, and many cities near us have done this, joined, I think, even 2 years ago. So it's an effort that's gaining momentum.
okay, well, we'll take that on when we go to deliberation and
Okay.
the discussion for a motion.
Mayor, do you still have item number 1 in your
I
blue
do.
cards? There's 3 more.
For the
Okay,
benefit,
and I just wanted to clarify, the city attorney did review and approve this. This is the one the city attorney has not reviewed and has not approved.
Could we ask
Am I
him to
correct?
come in and read it?
He's in a hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, I
Okay,
can
I'm
pull.
just saying, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Well, I want to clarify that there's nothing in there that hasn't been approved by some city attorney somewhere. We didn't fabricate this. We took different resolutions and tried to take the strongest
okay,
language.
we're sort of debating the merits of the resolution. Right now, let's just get questions of staff.
Why is this on the agenda? Why are we doing this at this special meeting? I had no idea this was coming up, and it seems like
I think the reason it's on the agenda is that it did come before council. It was referred to a subcommittee of which the Mayor Pro Tem was at least one member. And because we're going on hiatus, or on, supposed to be on hiatus, a special meeting was called on the fences and hedges. And the city manager and I reviewed it and said, if we're not going to meet for another 4 or 5 weeks, put it on. If you wanted to.
Just seems like we have a lot of public speakers. This seems like an important issue. We've had it multiple times. That would lend to the fact of us doing it under our normal schedule when we haven't told most of the public that we weren't going to be here at all, doing it on a Monday at 5 o'clock instead of Tuesday at 7 p.m. It seems like this is an important issue with all this input that we've pretty much just tricked the public into not understanding why it would possibly be on a Monday at 5 p.m.
May I respond to that briefly?
Well,
Okay.
we can get into that as to if we're going to take any action this evening. I don't believe there's anything in the resolution. Of course, I haven't seen this latest one that
We
you
have 30
prepared.
drafts. Our attorney hasn't read it.
Okay, but please, let me just finish the comment. I don't believe there's anything that's legally obligating us to do anything but expressing a concern over the issue. And I guess the question for us would be, does this accurately reflect our view of what's going on in the world and the climate? So I've got 10 cards, and I'd like to remind everybody in the audience, or maybe not remind, but inform you that we do take public comment, and because of the number of cards and the length of time it takes, we limit the time per speaker. There are little lights up here that go from green to yellow to red, and then we request that you kind of wrap up your remarks. So I've got, I think, 10 cards here, and that's about 30 minutes worth. Are there other cards out there that I haven't received? I think I saw somebody just lay one down. Is that intended to speak? Yeah, I do. I'm very alert. I'm old, but I'm alert, yeah. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to submit a card? Because I would prefer the length of time we're allowing each speaker is sort of predicated on how many cards. We would cut it to a shorter period of time in the event that there are more. Okay, let's start with
I'll
Darlene.
take public comment.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad all these people are here, but I just,
Ryan, go ahead.
well, I anticipate making a motion to continue this as soon as we're done taking public input. So I just, Councilmember Haney made a good point that if we are anticipating doing that, I don't want to make people feel like they came here for no reason. Of course, we can take public input tonight, but I just don't know whether we're going to do, I don't
That's
know
what
whether
I-
we should
Okay,
make that
well,
motion now and decide, or
okay.
wait till after public input.
Well, let's, so make your motion and.
Well, I'd make a motion that we continue this to a regularly scheduled meeting, that there's no,
Okay.
that
yeah.
while,
Okay.
while I've heard that it would be better done sooner than later, I don't think there's anything that is going to change as far as us, whether we pass this tonight or in the future, that's going to make any difference as far as timing is concerned.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, can I discuss it now?
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, the city has people get emails, so they were alerted about this in the time that we're legally supposed to notify people, which was last Friday. I made a huge effort. I put it all over Facebook. We got numerous emails from the public showing interest in this. I don't think we're trying to, as far as your assertion that we're trying to hide something, we're not trying to hide anything. And this has been on, the public has addressed this at the last 2 meetings, so it's not surprising that to my opinion, this is a good time because we're not worn out, it's a short meeting. It's an excellent time, I think, at least to have a discussion about it and hopefully adopt the resolution, but at least get started.
Okay, well,
May I point out just on the motion, my understanding is that a motion to continue still requires us to take public comment.
yeah, the folks who've come this evening can still comment, but I think Ryan is simply giving everybody a heads up that they're.
That was all. I agree with you. Bill. That was why I wasn't going to address it until afterward, but.
Yeah, that we may take, it's possible not take an action, which is true of any item that comes before us, but I think that's a.
But we're obligated to take public
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
Okay, I have now 12 or 13 cards. Darlene Patrick. with Russell Sidney on deck.
Thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of being here and speaking to you. This is an incredibly important issue. And I want to commend the city manager, the city council for bringing this forward. I would endorse a version of this amendment, but I do take exception to the word emergency. I may be the only one here, but I went through the dictionary definition of what does emergency mean. If you bear with me, a sudden, urgent, usually unexpected occurrence requiring immediate action. A state, especially a need for help or relief created by some unexpected event. That was the Merriam-Webster. The Cambridge, something dangerous, serious, such as an accident that happens suddenly or unexpectedly and needs fast action in order to avoid harmful results. The reason I take exception to the word emergency is that even now you're talking about putting this discussion off. This is not an emergency like a fire or a flood where people have to get out of the house. This is a crisis, and it's important, absolutely, but it's not an emergency. When you use the word emergency for things that are not emergencies, it lessens the impact of that word. And I'm thinking there of the little boy that yelled wolf or the dike or something like that, so that when it truly was an emergency, people, yeah, it's another fire alarm. So I would caution you, don't use the word emergency. I went through the previous version, which was quite long with a bunch of whereases, and I think the difficulty I have with that is that those are stated facts that I tend to agree with, but not everybody does. I mean, we know that there's a lot of climate skeptics out there, maybe not Nohi, but there are, and I would hate to see the council get themselves tied up with proving something that is, whether climate change is real or not. What the second version of the amendment reflects, I think, is a way of addressing, yes, this is serious, yes, this is important, this is a crisis, and this should be part of every decision-making that you make as a city council. And I would highly recommend that you accept the second version. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Russell Sidney, and
Thank you, council members. Thank you for the support for the electric vehicle event this week. You guys made a difference. And thank you for bringing this resolution forward. I was hoping it would be one less thing for me to have to bug you about. What I have come to say comes from being a scientist trained in biology, in ecology, agricultural sciences, and the sciences related to developing and changing agriculture up to the master's degree level. There is no more serious threat and urgent need for change than the unfolding climate crisis, being on par with a slowly unfolding nuclear war or the extinctions of the dinosaurs. My journey with climate change can be told in ice. The first glacier that told the story was back in the 1990s. The glacier was receding at exponentially increasing rates and was measured out on the ground. I had to pay attention as the climate change theories were known to me back then. Stories of melting land ice showed up increasingly frequently. Then the legendary snows of Kilimanjaro disappeared for the first time in known history. The second glacier caused me to walk close to a mile and cross rapidly flowing ice runoff. I listened to the melting. It was the quietest sound that haunts me 20 years later. I knew the climate change models were accurately predicting the change process. I had to walk almost 10 miles to reach the last glacier. It was on the southernmost part of the Andes Mountains, and it had only 10 more years left to be there. That was 7 years ago. I knew the timetables of the climate change models were conservative and things were speeding up. In the resolution, it talks about what would happen if the ice on Greenland were to melt and the pending disaster that represents. Consider the land ice on the Antarctic is many times the size of Greenland. The warm, deep ocean currents are just now reaching the Antarctic seas. Can you imagine what would happen if many times the land ice of Greenland were to go at once? The length of time to change this is very long. Turning the Titanic was an emergency before the iceberg came into view. Changing the way that we are dealing with climate change is going to take even longer. We need to do the things that mitigate this, including all the electric vehicle and the stuff I've been hammering at for a long time. Developing the microgrid is becoming a clear part of this. Energy efficiency, maximizing local food, and of course, carbon sequestration are all the things that we can actually do in this community.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
One last comment. I've been
Quick.
trying to get this changed for 15 years, and it's not happening. It takes calling an emergency to get this to get going.
Thank you, Russell. Margot Davis, if I've got that, or Margot, and Bob Daddy on deck.
Good afternoon. Margot Davis. This is my first time here. I am a concerned Ventura County citizen, living in the Ventura River Valley for 42 years. And I'm here because Ventura County needs climate emergency resolve. We need a unified regional climate emergency effort. Ojai has you guys. You guys are a strong, progressive, environmentally conscious council who can lead. You can convert us to a restorative economy. You can catalyze a unified regional climate emergency mobilization in the rest of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margot. Bob Daddy with, let's see, Jeff, is that Otterbun? On deck.
Good evening from Monday. I'm going to take an entirely different tact. My corporate training at State Farm, we always ask a different question. What's the downside if we just do it? So I want you to keep that in mind. What is the downside if you say we're going to accept it and do it? So I want you to keep that thought. With that thought, our sustainable, resilient city is part of the problem, because when Tim Dewar brought to this council an opportunity to go with 100% maintenance equipment, all electric, you did it. Thank you. But we don't even have a station to charge our own equipment. I really think we should. We don't have solar that we generate to take care of our municipalities' electric needs and get off the grid. We don't have solar units in place now to take care of the continuing deficit that we run in our lighting district. And so, again, if you vote for it, I don't know what harm it will do. But I do know that we need to get on the stick, and we need to be self-sufficient, and we need to be responsible for us. The biggest problem we have in California outside of our earthquake are wildfires. The biggest contributor to wildfires are landlines and the grid and the transportation of energy between. So what I would like us to do is, if we're going to be just truly resilient, sustainable, debt-free city, is invest in a solar farm like they've done at the community government center. You have property that's available very close to here. Let's go ahead and have the resolve to indebt ourselves now for something that we will be getting an increasingly bigger return as time goes by, because energy is not going to get less expensive with what we need to do, the restrictions, the environment. It's going to get more expensive. So as you look at this resolution, take a look at first what harm it will do if we pass it. And then second, please devote the same amount of time and energy to making us, at least the city municipal entity itself, grid-free and outside power-free. Because, again, by us not generating our electricity, we're buying that coal-fired and a lot of other things from other areas, and so is California. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Jeff, you're up, and Bill Miley's on deck.
Good evening. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm going to agree with Marga in that you people in front of me are super important in our community as a whole in Ventura County. You can be leaders that will go not only just as far as the county goes, but statewide. And it's important. These kind of small community leadership that comes from your bench here, I can't express how important it is, I think, in the advancement of this emergency. And I would insist on the word emergency because in geological time, this came on us like that. And it's unexpected. It is an unexpected emergency. And the word emergency is important because it sets us into a state of mind, an emergency state of mind, which makes us dedicate maximum effort into finding solutions to the problem. And I think we need to keep that emergency mode on the fire. I know it's difficult because you don't see it. It's not like it's right here in the room. But it is present in our planet, on an everyday basis. And many, many, many people do see it every day. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you. Bill Miley with Wendy Hilger on deck.
Good evening. My name is Bill Miley, and I've lived here for a long time. In reference to the draft resolution, the whereases, and I sent you this email, the whereases in the draft resolution certainly make a strong case for considering the Earth's climate change as a crisis. I might have preferred that one or more of the whereases include comments from the climatemobilization.org. Their goal is to create a worldwide mobilization similar to the energy and accomplishments reached in the World War II. Obviously, efforts are mandatory in follow-up to such a declaration. Your council is commended for fast-tracking this. And then I say, I took a screenshot of the mobilization.org, not that, the climatemobilization.org. And I want to read you something here. The pledge that they ask people to, and organizations and government to adopt is this. The climate crisis is causing immense human suffering and damage to the natural world. It threatens to destroy civilizations and kill billions of people. Overcoming the climate emergency is the greatest moral imperative of our time, and they have 3 goals that they ask people, groups, to adopt. Commence a World War II scale mobilization to restore a safe climate. 2, end all greenhouse gas emissions within a decade. And 3, enlist the American people in a just mobilization that rebuilds our democracy and ensures good jobs, health care, and dignity for all. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Mayor, may I? Bill, come here for a moment, please. I just want to explain that here's a revised version. It starts with the quote.
quick answer is the first whereas I think you just read, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Fine.
We
Thank you.
adapted the language.
Okay. Okay. Wendy, you're up, and Michelle Ellison is on deck.
Thank you so much. And I only saw one version. I didn't know there were subsequent versions. But I think it is a truly important subject, and I kind of agree that we need more time to think about it, talk about it. I think it really needs to be discussed more. So I skipped a whole bunch of things that I was going to say. I'll just say a couple. There are many questions regarding the proposed resolution. The citizens of Ojai have not had enough notice or enough time to discuss the critical proposal. Each whereas in this resolution needs to be discussed and thoroughly understood. I think each person has a different notion of what the words mean. It's interesting, as you look across the country, different cities are proposing different items. And so I think it's all-encompassing and very confusing to a lot of people. And why the rush? We are going to be considering Ojai's general plan very soon. This proposed resolution could have a tremendous impact on that document and Ojai's future. Please do not approve it at this time. Give us more time and more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Michelle Ellison with Chris Hilger on deck.
All right, good evening. I'm Michelle Ellison. I'll keep it brief because I know, we have several of us speakers and you know where I stand on this. And I just want to first acknowledge and appreciate the urgency by which you put this on the agenda. And we heard from the community within the last month. Several people came out and expressed a desire to make sure this gets agendized quickly, and I appreciate your responsiveness to that. I support a resolution declaring a climate emergency, certainly. Which version, I think it's a matter of discussion. I worked with Sousa earlier today, which we can discuss later if we get into the details of the revised version that Sousa had worked up with my input. And included in that, I think this is an important distinction. This is an important first step to acknowledging the problem. But then I think we've talked about this, Randy, then the need for the policy to back that up. And so included in the revised version is language about creating, at your suggestion, a climate emergency mobilization committee, which would engage people in the community to come up with strategies to actually take action in support of acting on the climate emergency. So I just want to let you know this is an important first step to then creating action plans around that. So that's all for now.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Chris, you're up with Anita Hendricks on deck.
Chris Hilgers, Park Road since '69. I think that, of course, I'm for environment and making it better in this country, but I think we need to think about the implications of all the things that are being proposed. And how does it affect the individual citizens of the city of Ojai, both pro and con? Business, labor, what's going to happen in the future, so that we have a clearer understanding of where we're headed for, rather than voting point blank for something we don't know all the facts about. And one of the things I thought about is that obviously the easiest way to make the environment is better is to as individuals in the city and in the state and in the country, is do whatever you can to buy American. Because if you buy American, you're buying on the auspices of things that are under very harsh environmental conditions, and therefore you're cutting down on the smog in the rest of the world. And it will take a long time for the rest of the world to catch up, and that's our biggest problem, in my opinion. So by buying things here, even though they cost more money, you're supporting our own people, our own economy, and you're making the country better. And I thought it was very interesting. There was a little blurb in Forbes, years ago they thought Wendy had some money, so we got a free subscription to Forbes. But there was a nice article in there and saying that the most efficient steel company in the world has now been opened up on the Mississippi River in a little town by Osceola, Arkansas. And they now make 4,500 tons of rolled steel per day. They're the most efficient steel country in the world. And they have 529 employees, and they make $129,000 a year. And this is the direction that I think the country should be going in, because making ourselves strong will put more pressure on other people to come into the picture. So I would say to everybody that's here, it's a hard decision to make. It's all the way from a car, and I'm guilty as anybody else, but you need to make decisions about what the content of the things that we buy, and it's very difficult to do. But the more you do to support the things that are made in this country, because they do cost more, because we are environmentally conscious and tough, as anybody knows going into business, the better off we'll be, and I think the better off the world will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anita, you are up, and Jack Weber is on deck.
Hello. Sometime in the last few months, The Guardian published a report on a UN study, very comprehensive, about climate. And they said we had, at that time, like 13 months to make a difference. And after that, it would be too late. There are some climatologists, one climatologist I know of, who says it's already too late. there's nothing we can do about it. The momentum is so strong. And we, in our lives, we're used to certain habits, and we're used to doing things in a certain way. He used the analogy of the Titanic. We are on this huge movement that has a momentum. And it's just so easy to just go along with that. We don't have, time, according to some, time may be up. There are some people who are questioning climate change, particularly the billionaires whose oil interests are at stake, who have created a questioning about climate change. And I won't go into all the details. I'm reading a remarkable book called Dark Money, which will tell you amazing things. But aside from that, I would have to say is, it is an emergency. We don't have time to just sit around. We have to act, and there's radical, very definite things that have to be done if we even stand a chance. To continue business as usual invites our own demise, that of our fellow creatures on the planet and our planet. Please, we've got to do something. I know everything looks peachy keen and fine right now, but we really don't have time. This is an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Weber, you're up. Phil White, you're on deck.
Hi, council members. Thanks for listening to us again talk about climate emergency. I came up here figuratively naked tonight, not knowing what I was going to say, so I'm just going to pause and feel and think my way through it. You know, I've been researching and studying climate science for almost a decade, pretty intensely. And I am still at a loss for how to speak to people that either on one extreme deny that climate change exists, and then on the spectrum from denial to the emergency that we're actually in, which is supported by all the good science today, is how to speak to people along that spectrum to get the message through that we're actually on this other end, that we're on this polarity of emergency. And so as I thought about what I might say tonight, that came up. So I speak to you with simple words to invite you to somehow step outside the box of what has been mentioned by Anita, business as usual, and thinking in the way that we do. So we're evolutionarily biased to not only ignore climate change, but to be unable to grok and to apprehend it to the degree that it exists. It's an incredibly difficult concept to even conceive of. And I've been leading a climate change group here in Ojai for the last 10 months. And it's only in a group that we're able to together grok the enormity of this, and we still don't come close enough. So we stand and sit here today bringing forth the urgency of something for which we're so biased and ill-equipped to even conceive of. So if you can stretch your minds for a moment, not that you don't just to listen to us at all, but that this is beyond an emergency. I'm glad Jeff mentioned geologic time. This is more than an emergency, and I don't know what the word for that is. So we can't even wait 7 weeks until you're out of recess, because anything could happen any day, and that's scientifically based as well, per the methane and the permafrost melting. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Jack. Phil White, you are up with Catherine Barron on deck.
Good evening.
Hi, Phil.
Thank you, Mayor Johnston, members of the council. I'm Phil White. I live just outside city limits, 1 block on Layton Street. I'm a member of the County Planning Commission representing the Ojai Valley and the rest of District 1. I'm an engineer. And at the present time, the county is doing an update of its general plan. And for the first time in their general plan, they will be dealing with climate change. And I have to say that global warming and climate change is an existential threat to Ojai, Ventura County, California, and the whole planet. It is a crisis. It is an emergency, and it needs to be dealt with. I've tried to be a leader on the Planning Commission and this general plan update to put together a comprehensive climate action plan that will get Ventura County to do its fair share of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere. And I encourage the city of Ojai to do the same thing within its jurisdiction. I think this emergency resolution is a good start. But beyond that, I would encourage you to start working on your own climate action plan. I know you've already done a lot of good things to your credit, and I encourage you to keep going with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Catherine Barron, you are up, and I have 2 cards left. One does not have a name on it. The other has Ron Whitehurst. So if you turned a card in and your name hasn't been called, you'll need to bring that up to me, but proceed.
I want to start by thanking the City Council for prioritizing the climate emergency request with swift efficiency. I want to be direct with you all. In my experience, discussions and dialogue with others isn't really productive if those participating can't agree on the underlying foundational values. So, to set the groundwork for us to have a productive exchange of ideas and opinions, I hope to clarify that I am coming from a place of valuing life. I deeply cherish this human experience and getting to live in this valley where the treasures of the natural world, a diversity of citizens, plants, insects, birds, critical resources such as clean water and air, are vital components of the health and prosperity of this interconnected community we call home. I hope that at least we can agree upon. Next, we get to all work together by creating a citizens' assembly to uplift what we love and care about. This process will not be easy. We are facing an incredibly narrow window in which to defend our ability to experience the planet as humans have taken it for granted for thousands of years, as a livable Earth. The International Panel on Climate Change, a group of hundreds of scientists around the world monitoring the environments that they call home, are telling us that we have a budget of 420 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions. And to go through that, we would have a 2/3 chance of keeping it to 1.5 degrees Celsius of global heating. Let me break that down. Human activity, our current fossil fuel-based economy, our energy and food production emits 42 gigatons of carbon dioxide every year globally. With a 420 gigaton budget, that means we have only 10 years of current course activity without even accounting for expansion before we destroy our 2/3 chance at keeping warming below 1.5 degrees. But why 1.5 degrees? It's easy to lose sight of what even half a degree of warming entails. Another half degree would put us in a world where 50% of the global population would experience hazardous water scarcity. 10 million more people would lose their homes to rising sea level, and half of the species on Earth would lose half of their livable habitat. Not to mention here in California, every half degree of added heat multiplies the size of forest fire burn areas by 800%. We cannot risk going beyond 1.5 degrees of heat added. We only have a handful of years to get ourselves a 60% chance of avoiding that tipping point. That is why there is a rush on this issue. We can always amend and reevaluate, but we do not have time to delay. Please come from a place of valuing life and commit to the effort of rapidly eliminating fossil fuels so that we have a chance of leading Ojai to a future where life, regeneration, and community can thrive. Please join the 14 other cities and growing in California in declaring a climate emergency now and support strong ongoing mobilization to get Ojai on track for zero carbon emissions as soon as possible.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Happy fingers, but no. You what? I have the no-name card. Oh, okay, just a second. Ron Whitehurst, and is that Chelsea? That's on deck? Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Come on up.
I was in a little stupor there. Chelsea Satula, I want to speak out in favor of this resolution. It is a basic first step. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to address the emergency aspect of this is because our federal government is not. That's the only reason why we're here, is because our federal policy has failed us. And they should have been acting first many years ago. They're not. And that's why this has become a people's movement at the local level to affect the change that we need. I just want to also point out that Paris was the last major city to declare this a climate emergency. And if you don't want to focus on the evidence, the science-based evidence, you can take a faith-based approach to this. Because Pope Francis also declared a global climate emergency, warning of the dangers of global heating and that a failure to act urgently to reduce greenhouse gases would be a brutal act of injustice towards the poor and future generations. So even if you don't believe the science, or even if you don't feel that this is an emergency and feel compelled to act anytime soon, I want to just mimic another point raised earlier. What's wrong with acting and being wrong? If you declare an emergency and nothing emergency-like happens, but we make all these amazing changes that lead to a feeling of comfort and security and cleaner air and water, what's the harm in doing that? I urge you, if you can't see the evidence base, to use a faith-based approach on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. Ron?
Hi. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Ron Whitehurst. My wife and I run a small business. We produce beneficial insects and help farmers get off of toxic pesticides. And we are heating about 10,000 square feet of insect rearing rooms with a solar hydronic heating system. So after we invested in that, every day the sun shines, we get a better quality of heat, and it's clean, and we don't have to worry about, the budget for paying for that. The sun shines almost every day here. And so we have focused on the solutions to the problems of pollution in agriculture, to recycling waste. They're all there. The technology is there. We just need to pull it off the shelf and put it in place. And as the last speaker mentioned, what do we get? We get a better quality of life. And so I think that's what we need to focus on, is that we're moving towards a brighter, cleaner, healthier solution. I'm not going to lie to you. It's probably too late. But I think we owe it to our kids and our grandkids to give it that old college try. And it's urgent. We should have done it back in '76 when Exxon figured out that, burning carbon, is leading us down to a disaster. But we can do it now. And we need to focus on pulling up the wisdom of the group. That with these citizen committees or these citizen assemblies, as Extinction Rebellion talks about, then we are able to pool the wisdom, intelligence, and creativity of our community and put that to bear on this existential threat. So again, I appreciate your leadership in leading your community into these areas where we are putting together a more healthy, fulfilling, creative world. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ron. That's all the cards I have, or do we have one more?
Severa, you're up.
Oh. Oh, Severo. Yeah, come on.
Mayor Johnston, city council members, staff, I thank you for having tried to rush over here because I really do think this is an extremely important item to have public comment. I absolutely support you guys passing this resolution. I think it should have been done a while ago. You guys bringing it up right now, I'm so grateful that you guys are considering this, and I'm just in favor of it. There's just so much that we need to do as just not just us locally, but just everybody else in the state, in the nation, in the world. But everything starts local, so anything we could do to start making those improvements to make the future better for our children, we have to start now. So thank you for considering this.
Thanks, Severo. Appreciate your remark. Okay, that's all of the cards we have. This is not a public hearing, so I don't need to close it. Welcome back. City Attorney has now joined us.
Apologies, we had a hearing that ran late.
Yeah. Okay, subject is open for deliberation or a motion.
Could I ask the
We
city
have a
attorney?
motion on the table already.
I'll withdraw my motion. Let's just go ahead and do this.
Okay. Motion's been
Oh, okay.
withdrawn. Thank you.
We have no motion.
I need to know, Matt, if you had a chance to read the revisions that Michelle Ellison and I made, and if everything is legally up to speed.
Briefly, I did have a chance to review those as the commenters were making their points, and it would be legal to adopt the resolution as revised.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so can I continue, or someone else wants a turn?
Well, yeah, you don't need to withdraw your motion if you, we did, or do you prefer to withdraw?
Yes.
Okay. No, the second? Okay.
Okay.
Proceed.
So there's no motion.
Yeah,
No motion.
correct.
On the floor right now.
Okay. Do you want me to make a motion and then discuss, or?
Well, that
Okay.
would be a good way to proceed, but
Okay.
it's not
Well-
always required. We
All right.
we modify it sometimes in these meetings.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution of the City Council of the City of Ojai, California, endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency with the changes that were made, that I made with the help of Michelle Ellison. And if you want, I can read those changes. It's basically, the basis is the resolution that James provided us on Friday, with some items that we adapted from resolutions from other cities and from the website, the Pledge to Mobilize. So the resolution begins with, I would like to read the first words again, because this really shows that whether we realize it or not, there are millions of people who are in an emergency right now who do not have food, water, or a place to live, who are migrating. The statistics on the number of people migrating is just beyond comprehension. So the resolution begins thus: whereas the climate crisis is causing immense human suffering and damage to the natural world and threatens to destroy civilization and kill billions of people, we hereby declare that overcoming the climate emergency is the great moral imperative of our time. And I predict that if Ojai adopts this resolution, that the rest of Ventura County will follow. As Supervisor Linda Parks said to me once, she loves the way the Ojai tail wags the dog. Okay? And I know that she would be in favor of adopting this resolution. I think one of the most important items in this is on the bottom of page 2, the third paragraph up. It says, Michelle and I wrote, "Be it further resolved, the City of Ojai will form a climate emergency mobilization committee to present high-priority strategies to achieve emission reductions at emergency speed." And we can use this book. This is kind of my Bible. I have about 50 books on climate change at home, but it's called Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to Reverse Global Warming. It's edited by Paul Hawken. Probably most of you have read his previous books. And it has 100 of the most substantive solutions to reverse global warming based on meticulous research by leading scientists and policymakers around the world. And our committee could go through this book and adopt the items that are pertinent to Ojai. So we have documents that can help us fulfill the goal of being a model sustainable city that is awake to the emergency that we're living through.
Okay. Did you make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I made a motion.
To adopt it?
Oh, I forgot, yes, to adopt the resolution that, based on what James provided us, the original resolution, with the changes that we made. And again, I can point out those changes if you have trouble seeing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a second to that motion? Okay, I'll second the motion. Conversation. Bill?
I've been very consistent in my time here on council, and that is that I'm uncomfortable voting for something that I haven't had time to fully vet. I know it's not probably a popular thing to say tonight, but there's 2 pages of whereases here that I think were emailed to us within an hour and a half ago. Haven't had time to completely look at everything. Haven't had time to formulate questions to the city attorney, which is what I normally do, make sure that I know what I'm voting for. And so I'm very uncomfortable whenever I'm not fully aware and fully comfortable with what I am voting on. And I think in general, something like this that is, circulated to council just literally within a couple of hours ago is difficult for that vetting to occur properly. And I much preferred the focused one-page resolution that Councilperson Haney suggested, which focuses on us taking action and committing to principles without having 2 pages of whereases that, may or may not be written in a way that's clear and that I would be comfortable voting for. So that's the problem I have with the resolution.
May I ask him a question? My question is, did you read the original resolution that James provided on Friday?
Yes, and I thought there was some real ambiguities in that wording that I had problems with as well.
Okay, because I just want to make clear.
I like precision.
Just want to make clear that the revisions are based on that. Okay.
And I'll give one example. In this resolution, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth whereas speaks about 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels for temperature. It's a definite, we got a serious problem here, but it doesn't help us to not be precise and not to be clear. What is a pre-industrial level? How many years ago are we talking about? 2,000, 5,000, 12,000? If you look at climate change data over the last 10 or 20,000 years, yes, there's averages, and it's up and down, and we're having a spike now that's a serious issue we need to address, but those kinds of definitions that are not clear bother me.
How about if we strike that paragraph?
Well, no, I don't think it's appropriate to deliberate 2 pages of whereases tonight. And that's why I prefer the focused commitment to principles in the 1-page resolution that Mr. Haney suggested over getting into doing vetting at the dais that we should be doing with circulation of something like this well in advance of the meeting.
Further comment? Ryan?
I just want to say this. Go a couple of quick things. This body, the Ojai City Council, doesn't now I'm not saying that we should not declare an emergency. I want to word this very carefully, but it has not gone unnoticed to this body that this is an emergency already. And the idea that this is the first step is wrong. The first step was recycling. The first step was electric leaf blowers. The first step was plastic bags, favoring pedestrians and bikes over automobiles in the way we're looking at things. We have been, 100% energy choice. Those were first steps as well. We have not sat by idly. We've already been leading the way on this. You're asking us to declare an emergency. We're the first responders at the emergency. I just want everybody to know that. We are not sitting back, and this is not a wake-up call for this community or this council. We have been leading the way on this for a long time. So when I say that nothing's going to change by this in the next 7 weeks, I mean that nothing's going to change on the way we do business around here in the next 7 weeks based on passing this, because we already conduct our business based on this being a very serious issue, and we've already shown with our actions, not our words, that we take this very seriously. I don't know whether we should move forward with this tonight. I respect what Councilmember Wyrick had to say. There's some words in it that are awkward. I don't know if we're going to create a committee that's going to impose rules. We're not really sure about some of that. I think all in all, I know 100% of the council members up here because we've campaigned and I've talked to them and heard them speak at the desk. Everybody up here agrees that this is a very serious issue. Nobody up here denies that climate change is happening or denies the science. And I just want the public to be aware that, yes, we are trying to already lead by example, and we may need some additional time to make sure we do this right. We may vote on it tonight, but it doesn't change that without this document in front of us or without any of your comments tonight, it wouldn't change how I feel about the topic, and I feel the same way you do.
Ryan? Oh, Brian. Randy.
So-
I keep getting my R's mixed up.
So first of all, I think we need to thank Catherine, who a month ago came before us and actually started this ball moving in a little faster direction. So I think that that we need to applaud her for her activity, her action, and her spirit. So there isn't anyone up here that doesn't believe in climate change. Everyone agrees on that. I think everyone in this room agrees on it. So I think what I did is I read our packet and I read it thoroughly, and I had first of all my eyes glossed over after the first page, and then the second page, and I went, "There's more," and then the other part of me goes, while I agree the world has a problem, we can't solve that problem. We can only solve the problems in our community. So my resolution brought back the worldly order into a community order, and that's all I did. It still agrees in the fact in the Paris Accord. It still agrees that we have a problem. I don't necessarily agree that it's an emergency. I do agree it's a crisis. I do agree that there is a sense of urgency to it. So whether it's emergency, whether it's crisis, whether it's urgency, it doesn't matter. What we've got to acknowledge is that we've got to continue on the path that we've already started in this community. And to me, more importantly, is any decision and anything that we do moving forward, that we make sure that we bring the community with us. We cannot sit up here and dictate to you what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, why we're going to do it, and where we're going to do it. It's not fair. So we need to create a community dialogue. We need to have this discussion. And we need to make sure that any policy decisions, any ordinances, anything that we do in this community moving this ball forward, we do it together. And I think that's the most important thing that my page and a half outlines, is it agrees that we have a worldly problem. It agrees on some defined principles, but ultimately it says we can only do what we can do in our community. And once we do that, we'll influence the other communities within our county and hopefully influence other county communities throughout the state. But I don't think we can do it I don't think we can do it any faster. I don't think we can do it any grander. I don't think we can do it any differently. This resolution should be about us. That's what I believe. It needs to be about us and what we're going to do and what we acknowledge as a community. And that's where I started. Now, as I thank Catherine, and I want everyone else to, and I'm sure everyone has. But you know, when I weigh this, I think of my granddaughters, Piper and Paige. You know, they're 3 and 1.5. You know, when I read this worldly view, I truly believe I'm going to be dead before any of this actually really takes place. That's why I really think that we need to do things locally. We need to think about the impacts that we're going to have on this environment and how we can do it as quickly as we can, as well as we can, and do it as a community, so that our grandchildren and even our sons and daughters have a better world to live in. And so for me, that's where I am there. I don't disagree with Sousa's. I don't disagree with the one that the city manager proposed. I think mine is just more concise and to the point, and it talks about what we can do in Ojai. And by the way, you can always amend a resolution. You can always come back and add another resolution to it. So for me, I would like to, I know there's a motion. I would like to see if the motion maker would like to amend it and make it mine. And if so, I would support it.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Before you do that, I'm going to take a turn here at expressing opinion. According to protocol, I have to go last. I tend to go along with what Bob Daddy said, which is, you know, what harm does the resolution do? But then move past that, and what actions will we take to actually do our part? I don't see any harm in the resolution, and I think it's adding our voice to the chorus of voices at a time, as somebody pointed out, because we're not hearing it at the national level like we once were. All of the predictions from the, well, I shouldn't say all, because there are some scientists who I believe, or at least one or two, who weren't really climatologists, but who, working for the Mercer family, have claimed some doubt about this. But most scientific opinion predicted what we're seeing happening in our world, only it's happening much faster than they predicted. And I think that is the reason we need to add our voice, you know, to the chorus, saying this is emergency. Now, it may not be an emergency like a house on fire, but as somebody pointed out, the geologic time that we're dealing with, we are way behind time on what we're going to have to do. If you're driving a car, whether you want to call it an emergency or how you solve a problem, has a lot to do with the turning radius of your vehicle, how good your brakes are, and how quick your reflexes are. If you don't have all that going for you, think of how long it's going to take to turn around what we're doing. And even with our best efforts, what we're doing is be slow in coming, and we have to hope it's not too late. Some people have expressed that they think it is. And I have to say, there are days when I look at it and I say, you know, kind of what's the use? But what's the use? The use is you haven't lost if you haven't quit. And I got grandchildren, and hopefully they will have children, and future generations will ask, what did we do? All we're doing now is just simply expressing that we believe that there is an emergency out there, and it's binding us to nothing other than asking us to get a community conversation going. And then as a council, individual actions will be proposed, I think one of which is a solar farm in our town. Here we are, a town that prides itself on being the leaders in so much, and yet we haven't done it. And we certainly have plenty of sunshine and plenty of heat coming from the sun, which could be turned into energy. And those are things that we as a council could address, but none of that is included specifically in this resolution. This is just saying it's an emergency, we need to be doing something. And so I think the sooner we say we agree that it's an emergency and we need to be doing something, the better off we all are going to be. So with that, Susan.
Okay. Well, first I want to address the resolution that Councilmember Haney presented with us. And with all respect, I appreciate the effort to simplify. Simplifying is always good, but I feel that this is so important that your resolution lacks substance and urgency. I think if your eyes glazed over as you were reading the resolution presented to us in Friday, it's our job as elected officials to know what the language means. And there are hundreds, you could easily Google the language in the resolution to better understand it. That's our job. You know, we had time. Today, with the internet, it's so easy to find out information. And if there were, and like I said, if there were things that you really didn't understand, it could be crossed out or the language could be changed. I also want to remind us, there's a book on sustainable cities, maybe many of you read it, and there's a chapter, it's called The Fate of Our Cities is the Fate of the Earth. And what we're talking about here is the effect of cumulative action. And as you were talking, you even recognized that. And in fact, if you listen to yourself talk, I think in a way, you contradicted yourself because you do recognize the benefit of cumulative action. What we do here.
Better that we don't evaluate the other person, but your interpretation was it was.
Yeah. So my hope is that that you will see the wisdom of adopting this resolution, and that we then show our commitment by forming or recognize the intent at least to form a committee that will help move this forward. There is nothing in here. Everything we stated in here, I believe, will improve our quality of life, as others have stated. All you have to do is stand at the top of North Signal or any high peak in the valley and look down at the smog. That alone should tell you that we're in an emergency, and there are things that we can do, if we work together. That the technology is there. My hope is that a resolution like this will put a fire under us, and that we'll do many of the things that kind of have slid, and that we'll work together for the greater good.
So, Mayor, I have just going to have one quick comment. First of all, this isn't about you or me.
Oh, I know that,
Okay?
yeah.
And so I really don't appreciate that's how you word it. We all agree that this is an issue. We all agree on the extent of it. All I'm trying to do is bring it back to Ojai, because there are things that we have no control of outside of this community. And I just have a hard time with making resolutions and making statements about things I have no control over. And I think that that's what a broad-reaching statement/resolution does. It's all of these feel-good things that we have no say or control over. Let's bring it back to what we do have.
Okay,
And that's where I'm coming from.
No,
is
I didn't
that we
read,
do have.
Randy, I didn't read any feel-good things in this. I read nothing but concern. And I understand what you're saying, to bring it back locally, and we should bring it back locally. And we should do that step by step with what we choose to do to participate in trying to do our part in solving the problem. The question really gets down to is, do we want to raise our voice in a form of public opinion poll? Because I get asked things all the times in opinions polls that I have no control over, other than to say, yeah, I agree with that or I disagree with that. And I think this kind of a thing, that's all we're saying, is whether we agree or disagree. What we do after this will say how serious we are about having expressed our opinion. If we don't really believe it's a problem, we probably won't do much. And even if we do believe it's a problem, there's only so much we can do, but we should do it anyway, or do the best we can. Nothing? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
I just want to make sure, Randy, nothing I said is personal to you.
Right, okay. Sousa,
I have great respect for you.
Please leave that alone. We've covered it. You didn't mean it personally.
Okay.
But it's best that we not interpret other people's remarks. Okay, if there's no further comment, then I think we need to take a vote on the...
Oh, excuse me, which resolution are we voting on?
Your motion.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because
right.
Randy made a motion, I
He
thought.
was making a suggestion for a substitute.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
No.
Councilmember Wyrick?
No.
Okay, well, on a split decision. Yeah. That's what, that's 60%?
It's a resolution, folks.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Okay. Okay, please, 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 yeah, that's much better. That's our code. We no booing and no applauding, you know. People do that to us on the street, you know. A lot of times we deserve it.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion carries. Our next item is, James, the urgency on the municipal code governing the location and heights of fences.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll do a short presentation. Are we good to proceed?
Okay, we'll wait till the till the room clears to continue. You might ask them if they can step outside. Well, no, James got it. Yeah.
So before you is an urgency ordinance for fences, walls, hedges, and screens in the front setback. Just to remind you, on July 9th, there was a special meeting to consider a moratorium on these types of projects. The urgency ordinance and moratorium on that day received 3 votes in support, but didn't receive the required 4/5 vote. And it was noted at that time that this was at least partially due to the fact that the urgency moratorium would impact projects that had already applied under the current code. So the ordinance before you, and there is a slight revision. The version on the dais on page 8 has a sentence added to it to clarify the intent that this would not affect projects that had already received a zoning clearance or other zoning permit, which there's one currently. So the ordinance is not intended to affect that project. It's intended to prevent future projects from applying under this portion of the code. Just to remind you, the current language that's at issue defines the front setback as basically the nearest point of the property line of the parcel to the nearest point of the wall of the structure. And the ambiguity here that we've identified is that structure is vague. It's essentially 4 walls and a roof. So we've run into issues where structure was not necessarily what we think council intended it to be. And so that language, coupled with this diagram, which is currently in the code, shows that if you notice in the diagram, there's this accessory structure here. You notice that in the rear setback, that structure defines what the rear setback is. The diagram doesn't show a front setback or a front structure, I'm sorry. So but the language for the rear structure and the front structure currently are the same in regards to defining structure and not primary structure. So that language, the current language with this current diagram, essentially say that somebody could place an accessory structure on their property and it would modify the setback, which we don't think is council's intent. So the proposed language included in the ordinance before you tonight, it's underlined so you can see it on page 4, adds a section saying that the front setback for fences, walls, hedges, and screening shall be measured basically from the front property line of the parcel to the nearest point of the wall of the primary structure. Key change there is the word primary. So we're talking about essentially the house in a residential zone or whatever the primary structure would be in a non-residential zone. Now, I wanted to show just quickly 3 different situations that we've run into so you can see how it affects that scenario. The first situation is a property built at the 20-foot setback. The R1 and the R2 zones have a 20-foot setback.
So in this situation, there's 3 dash lines you're going to see. And the first one is the black dash line that just popped up here, right here. That's the 20-foot zoning setback of the base zone in an R1 zone.
2.6. James,
Okay.
Just to make sure everybody's following.
Yeah.
It's in 2 different places, right? In our packet, it's on page 2-6, page 4 of 9, attachment A. And then there was a handout, and on that page, it's on, it's the same, page 4 of 9.
It should be the same. The only difference on the
Same.
handout is the sentence saying that it doesn't apply to currently applied for projects.
The only other difference is on that same page, the one that has the diagram, at the top, subsection B for corner parcels, the version that's in the packet had the word primary added, but that was a result of an earlier version of this approach. When we revised it to add a separate section for fences, we should have deleted the word primary. That's the other change that was made in the one that was placed on the dais tonight. So that fences have their own rule under subsection C.
Mayor Johnson, a question for the city manager?
Yeah, Bill.
Yes.
And so that, if I, correct me if I'm wrong, but the front setback that you're talking about for zoning, that's for construction, period?
Yes.
It's not for, not for purposes of regulating type of construction, it's just construction, period?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. And then, but under the current language, somebody could construct something at that 20-foot setback, and then that becomes the new line for fences.
And it wouldn't even have to be a permitted structure?
No, it doesn't have to be a permitted structure.
It just has to have a foundation and walls and a roof, but it
would-
needn't necessarily hit the building code threshold.
Does
for
not
building
necessarily need to be permitted if it's less than 120 square feet?
That's correct.
And so, just to reiterate, so this is a simple, we have 3 different kind of illustrations we wanted to give. This is a simple situation with a typical project in an R1 zone has a 20-foot standard setback, which is that dotted line. This house is built to the dotted line. So under the current ordinance, you see the blue line that just came in the same place. It's the same setback because it's the wall of the structure. Now, under the new language, you'll see the green line just came in. And on this particular project, all of those things match because the new language is the first wall of the primary structure. So for this first example, it's a nice clean example. All of these things are the same.
Yeah, and it's the height we're talking about, not the structure itself. It's not the wall itself, it's the height of the wall that we're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about, when I say structure, I'm talking about the wall of the structure being used to define the setback.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that is the setback, to answer your point, that allows a fence between 3 and 6 feet in height.
Correct.
A fence that's 3 feet or shorter is okay anywhere in that.
Right.
Anywhere in that front area, but this is the lines that are at issue in these examples is the 6-foot height line.
Yeah, so in this example, all under either the current code or the proposed language, somebody could put a 6-foot fence in equal with the structure here. Now, in this scenario, you'll notice a couple of things. It's the primary residence is built further back from the street, and there's an accessory dwelling unit on this example. So again, 20-foot base zone setback, so you can't build in front of that 20-foot zone. And with the current language, the closest wall of the structure would be this accessory dwelling unit wall. So somebody could build a fence here at 25 feet.
Right. But another point is that what you just showed there of the ADU could also be a 10 by 10 foot
correct
decorative tower.
Correct.
And that would establish a new wall line.
Right.
It wouldn't even have to be a habitable structure.
Right.
Okay.
And so under the proposed language now, the fence would only be able to be put, fence hedge wall or screen would only be able to put at the wall of the primary structure, which is here, about 100 foot.
And also, doesn't our current ADU rules require it be in the rear?
So I use that as just an example, sketched it out, but yeah.
Our current ADU rules say that has to be in the backyard.
We took a look at that question. So this is an example. There's 3 or 4 properties that we're aware of that exist with this now.
And non-conforming.
Well, we took a look at that question. We didn't find in the ADU ordinance text that expressly requires it to be in the rear. So that might be a cleanup point to bring forward
Okay.
at a later
All
date.
right. I remember deliberating on that.
Yeah, I recall that we recalled the deliberations as well, but we looked at the text and we didn't find that particular limitation, so that might be a cleanup point.
Yeah, we did look at that prior to today, but so in this situation, somebody could put a fence currently at the front of the ADU. Under the proposed language, they'd have to put it back even with the primary unit. Then you have maybe a more out there example. There's some large lots, so you'd have a similar situation. We actually had a project a few months ago that came in that looked like this, which is they had the 20-foot zoning setback, and then they had a structure about 80 feet out, and then the actual primary unit was, in this example, it's 200 feet. In reality, we had one that was about 250 feet back. So with the proposed language, they'd only be able to put a 6-foot fence back even with the primary structure. So those were just 3 kind of illustrations of how it would affect some of the current project, or I'm sorry, not current projects, but potential projects. Like I said, we only had one project that had been applied for that would actually be affected, or that would have theoretically been affected by this. But those were a few examples. The item tonight has to be adopted by a 4/5 vote of council. And like I said, we added the language that it would apply to any project that has not yet received a zoning clearance. So that's the item before you.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay,
I have a couple questions.
Randy.
Please. So James, I just wanted to if we can maybe scroll back, I just want to be clear on, and maybe even help the community understand this. So the 20-foot or the 25-foot setback means that any homeowner in Ojai could actually build a house up to that 25-foot line.
So it depends on the zone, but the R1 and the R2 are 20 foot, and other zones like the RO zone has between 25 and 40 feet.
Well, yeah,
but yeah,
whatever that line is, whatever that imaginary line is, so that the homeowners understand this.
Mhm.
And I want to get clarity on that.
Yes.
So now, and what we're saying is, we're drawing that imaginary line at the existing structure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for instance, in this drawing here, if I connected the bottom left side of the structure, I guess that's an ADU, but let's just say it's another addition. Does that move my fence line to the front of that, or in parallel to that building?
Yes, we've actually had a couple people who considered applying that way of connecting their unit to their primary structure, and that would under the proposed language that would move the fence line.
Become part of the primary structure.
Mm-hmm.
So then it becomes part of the primary, which is that, and that's what we're removing is that. Well, that's what we're adding is we're clarifying it has to be to the primary structure.
Yeah, something connected to the house.
Okay. Now, is there any latitude to anyone applying for a variance to build a wall within now these new setback guidelines or these new housing guidelines?
Can always apply for a variance.
Yeah, I mean, a variance remains a viable option, and I recall that variances, there's a standard variance to get up to 6 feet or even higher if you could make the findings. And there's also a second particular variance for minor variance for fences above a certain height, up to, I believe, 7 feet. I'm looking for the exact text. But yeah, so a variance is always an option if they can make the findings. The rough findings are that there'd be some particular special circumstance about the property that means that granting the variance, or rather denying the variance, would be denying property right enjoyed by others similarly situated, and that granting the variance would not be granting a special privilege.
And why I ask that question is the homeowner that has a lot of this size, and let's put an imaginary lot line 20 feet behind the back of that house, and so they want to put a swimming pool in. Mm-hmm. And so and we don't have anything in our codes right now regarding swimming pools in front yards. In fact, when I was looking this up, I looked at 15 ordinances from 15 different cities and did not find one ordinance that denied a pool in the front yard. So if I put my swimming pool into that area, and now because of code saying that I need a 60-inch fence, do I have the right now to come, to either ask for the variance or to request in my permit that I get that 60-inch wall?
So you definitely have the right to ask for the variance. Whether it would be granted is can you make that special circumstance finding? And, if you've got, you maybe, it would depend on the particular facts. It's a bit difficult to judge.
So what I'm
in
trying
the
to say
abstract, but you
is
would-
I can't put my pool in unless I have some type of 60-inch pool safety fencing.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. So that's all I'm trying to, I just want to be clear on this, that I think one of the other things that we need to address is swimming pools in front yards sooner than later. And along with that, this is something that I'd just like to bring to council's attention in general. We have asked planning to review Title 10. We asked over a year ago. The response that we got from the commission was, well, we need someone to read it for us, make recommendations, and therefore then we'll vote on it or adopt or not adopt. I would like the city manager, if I can get the support of council, to actually designate someone from planning staff to work the planning commission and actually start the review process of Title 10 immediately. And if they've got to do one a week, or if they've got to do one every 2 weeks, but they need to start reviewing that, just like the BAB did. And I'd just like support from council to say, let's do that so we can eliminate some of this stuff that keeps coming back to us, and also so that it can be caught at the proper moment in a commission hearing.
I agree.
And I'll just say the planner and I last week met on that topic and agreed on doing exactly that. So unless council tells me not to do so, we're planning to move forward that way.
Okay, I would support that.
I'm going to make a motion to, again, cognizant of the fact that this whole package is coming back to us later, more comprehensively, but right now we have a situation to address, and I'm going to move approval.
Okay, do we have any cards, though, on this?
There are no cards left, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't see any cards in the mayor's hands,
I
so.
will not deny the opportunity to anyone who wishes to come forward.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I apologize to the public. I did not see any cards in the mayor's hands.
We wouldn't know the cards there.
Just to clarify, Councilmember Wyrick, your motion is the revised one?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the revised, but I'll hold on that until we hear.
Okay.
everybody.
I think I'm reading the last name correctly, Lynn. I can't, no? You've been, okay, good, thanks. Bob?
I've had my hair on fire for this subject for a long time. It's not been a year, it's been 2 years, 5 years, it's been 6 years. Councilman Haney, long ago, we had a discussion on this about the wall on my private street and how this was a mess and how we had a bunch of clowns for city managers and we had a commission that wasn't doing their job. When I got done
Us
talking
too.
to, and
We're all
for the,
clowns.
and for the city council for not, this is not a democracy when you're on a commission. They serve at the will and pleasure of the council, and they're supposed to do what the council asked them to do, and a year later, after missing a half a dozen meetings because they had nothing to do, we have nothing to do. We're here tonight because they had nothing to do. It's time for you to make sure we have some serious people. So I talked to the chair of the planning commission, and he said, you know, it's not that difficult for us to go through a half a dozen items that are extremely problematic. Not through the Entitled 10. We can do that. I offered to meet with Mr. Quillisi and to go through those with him exactly as we did with the BAB. And what we're going to do is make recommendations. They're not a lawmaking body. They make recommendations. That's all they do. And we've had a number of these different issues that have been a problem for everybody. We've known about it, we've stumbled over it, and we haven't changed it. So I talked to Mr. Quillisi tonight. I said, well, give me something to say. And he said, I looked up fences, hedges, and walls. There are 47 references in our code. And that's why we never get it right. When I was speaking with Suzanne a couple of days ago about this subject, we went ahead and took it from the time that I caused the city to spend well in excess of 5 figures and messed around for 5 years and rubbed their nose into the fact that they were playing around. And we still continue to do this. And what I think we need to do is is go ahead and we can get an ad hoc committee. We don't have to have a regular committee, but we need to do some type of committee. I don't know that we want to go ahead and get a consultant, because the consultants that just wrote the last two versions made them a little bit worse than the prior version, in the fact that when I went to talk to Suzanne and I talked to her about this very item being discussed, it's not in one section of our code, it's in another section of our code. And so I have to say that I don't think it's fair to the public that when you want to put in a fence, you got to go to the bird nesting section between April and August, which is not connected to the rest of the section. I also have been asking for years that we change our applications. And what it will simply say is, if you're going to put in a fence, you got to do this amount of clearance. You got tree drip line, you got this, you got this, you got this, you got this. And we just don't function well and have it all together. So we need to revise a lot more than the codes. We need to go ahead and change the way we have our applications and instructions and put in all those pertinent things. And 15 years ago, I spoke before this council and I applauded the state of Florida. State of Florida sued the cities and sued the counties and restricted them from writing a single code that was more complicated than the average person's ability to understand it. And we certainly haven't done that in Ojai. We can clean up and simplify this thing and make it a lot easier. So I would hope that you'd move on with this thing, because it's just one of these things. And one last thing, we do have mandatory lateral inspection for every property that changes hands. Every one. If we can do that, we can have a form that notifies every person that comes in that they can't do anything until they get a clearance, not a permit change and not a fee, until they get a clearance. So we don't have a situation at the corner of Park and Grand where we have a standoff between the city and a citizen. We don't have people that come here with an intent of violating everything we're going to do. They just don't know what we're going to do. And so I think if they go through escrow and they know they have the stipulation where they need to get a zone clearance, then it's not, gee, we made a mistake, now we spent all this money on this wall, now we did this thing, now we did that thing. And the last thing is, you need to dramatically curb director's exemptions, because those mistakes will last for centuries, like the Signal Street wall. The climbing tower that was done by a temporary director. And that's going to be with us for centuries. What a mistake. We have a city manager that has discretion of $25,000. We have community development directors with a 2-year or less tenure over the last couple of decades plus that can make millions of dollars worth of mistakes without a single limit. Isn't it time you limit their discretion down to $2,500? Because we just really don't need it. If it is something that's important, it needs to be before this council. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Mayor Johnson?
Bill?
Yeah, I believe we have a time certain specification for the general issue of the ordinance for fences, walls, and has to come back to City Council, which would include the breadth of scope of issues that Mr. Daddy just raised that need to be addressed. But tonight, we have an issue right now, and not to the exclusion of those concerns, because we've already committed to deliberating on the broader issues. So I'm going to reiterate the motion to approve the revised 722 of 19 urgency ordinance for approval tonight.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If we lost our clerk. Yeah, right. That never happens, does it? Yeah. Sorry,
that
Gail.
on purpose.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Item number 3. Agreement with the Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce for business development. Do we have any cards? No. Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, this item is on the agenda tonight. The council approved $40,000 in funding for the chamber as part of the budget this year. And the chamber at that time presented a proposal to operate a business development office on behalf of the city and become an initial point of contact for businesses. And had a stated goal of helping the city recruit, retain, and grow business in Ojai, creating jobs for residents and strengthening the neighborhood commercial districts. Staff recommended that council discuss whether there are any desired performance metrics or specific goals they would like the chamber to achieve during the term of this agreement, and then ultimately to approve the agreement. So attached to the item is a draft agreement with some performance metrics.
Mayor, do we need to have Jamie from the chamber at the speaker for any questions? Or
Well, if you have a question of him,
okay.
I've wrestled with this for a number of reasons, and I was one of the people who said during the budget process that any applicant, not pointed at the chamber, but any applicant should, if they're asking the city for money, we should have some sort of criteria by which we can evaluate those things, which should include such things as what their financial conditions are, whether their directors are paid, et cetera, et cetera. And that got translated by staff, and I commend the city manager for the effort that went into coming up with the agreement. But my feeling is that we are, in a way, being asked, well, my interpretation is kind of a sustaining member, or as someone with a major interest in the Chamber of Commerce as a partner regarding our tax base, because basically we live on sales tax, property tax, TOT. So I guess my feeling is that rather than get this specific right now, even though I was one of the ones who said let's get specific, I think we're sort of betting on jockeys rather than on the horse. In this case, Jamie is the jockey, somebody who's brought real energy to the Chamber of Commerce and a new view. I frankly think that the task that the Chamber is volunteering for is going to be extraordinarily difficult, just as it is for the city, and maybe, in my view, maybe even impossible, but not something that we shouldn't at least try. So my thinking is that something as simple as allocating the $40,000 to the chamber with the understanding that they would come back and demonstrate how that money was used to advance the program, and to come up with some sort of structure in the event that they felt that it was working or could be made to work, to provide these things. It just seems that this particular agreement, as I read through it, is about maybe half to 3/4 of the way complete, and so why bind ourselves under a legal contract when we can become just simply a partner, and we'll say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. At the end of whatever period of time in the expenditure of this money, we need a really detailed report showing how it was used and how it benefited the community before we go further. So anyway, Bill.
I have a little slightly different take, especially given the fact that there's a very strong termination clause in this agreement, which says that the city may terminate this agreement for any reason on 5 calendar days written notice to consultant, which pretty much protects us if something starts developing that we're not comfortable with. Well, the reason I think it's important to engage with a professional services contract immediately is that we have a city manager who we've asked to do a lot of work. He does not have a deputy. And I think from a standpoint of helping with the entire list of recitals on attachment A, page 1 of 18, continuing with one bullet on the next page, that set of recitals is important in terms of the kinds of things that we've asked to be pursued that we have not had the staff availability to pursue. And so I think given the fact that we are not legally binding ourselves to any fixed term, and the fact that I think our city manager needs some help with providing these services in terms of outreach, things like the broadband capabilities are an ongoing effort right now.
with EDC that we have not had a chance to participate in. I remember something else, for example. I remember being told that we're having an uptick in terms of our licenses for film and television permits, and the basic reason is that the EDC told me is now under Mr. Vega's leadership, we're returning the phone calls. We weren't even returning the phone calls before. So I just think that this is the kind of thing that given the situation that we're in, that would be a good thing to proceed with now. Yeah.
well-
I'm going to move approval of it.
Okay, is there a second to that? Before we
Questions
continue?
before
the-
I can.
Is there a second before we
Yeah,
continue?
I'll second it.
If there's not second, we can still continue. Okay, we've got a second. Okay, so go, Susan.
Okay, my question is, we've approved the 40,000 in funding. What you said, they could still end up with the full funding, correct? If I understood you correctly?
The full funding?
The 102, they're
No.
requesting approximately 102,000 in funding?
No, that was the request. What I'm saying is that we budgeted for this year, and we actually went in the hole to do it.
We budgeted 40.
40.
We
And
budgeted.
And so the 40, if we're going to do this, I mean, I don't envision us saying, I don't know how we would, in good faith, suddenly say, wait a minute, we're pulling the cord on this, on a $40,000 expenditure. I think what we have to do is, I'm thinking of, giving the reins to this. My concern is, as a former city manager, is every time you draw one of these, if the manager's doing his job, he's got contract administration, and that adds to the burden. As opposed to, they did a good job of sitting down and talking to each other and members of the council talking with the chamber as to the kinds of things that you're mentioning, Bill. We do need help with that stuff. We haven't been doing a particularly great job ourselves in the past. So I'm just thinking it's a adding the structure to it maybe adds to the work of the management, but, I'm not unalterably opposed to it. It just seems like it would be simpler to do it the other way, and then we take a look at it. We look at the report and we say, now do we wish to go forward and put up more money because it's been a good investment, or whether we simply say we're a sustaining member, we recognize there's a general benefit to what they do, but we can't afford to, we need to put more money into our own city government rather than into outside agencies to do it. But if that outside agency happens to, surprise us all and and have that success, then well, that's the place to send the money. So anyway,
I'm still
Ryan?
not.
Well, you're not finished.
Okay,
pardon
explain to me, do you give the 40,000 up front, and then, because then you can't do a termination clause? I mean,
The last page says it's six payments of $6,666.
okay,
See,
sorry.
but that's kind of a little bit of the difference. I'm saying, go ahead, save on the administration, trust the chamber to make a good faith effort and hope it succeeds, and then come back, and during that time, we could craft something like this for an ongoing relationship. Right.
I helped work on this with Jamie and with James, and this was never designed to be a bunch of work for James to have to check and make sure it's happening. What the intent was to make sure that the community understood what the specific goals of this partnership would be, especially because when the Visitors Bureau existed and it was decided not to continue, that there was some there was a difference of opinion in the public about whether or not we should be promoting tourism that way. And we wanted to make really clear that all of these listed items are very specific because, one, we believe they're things that the chamber can achieve. They're not going to get all these done in the next 6 months, most likely, but a lot of these are ideas that can be worked into that. But more importantly, to make sure that nobody would misconstrue this as a reboot of the Visitors Bureau, but is clearly something different that is about business development and these specifics that are in here. So that was the only reason it was there. I don't think James has much intent of having to, when we discussed this, I don't think it was going to be like a monthly or bi-monthly or anything like that, review of what was going on. More that Jamie would have an opportunity after a period of time to say, hey, here are the things we're working on, and here are some of them that are on the list. I don't think that the chamber did not push wanting to have this kind of agreement forward. It was something that, based on comments from the council, we thought probably needed to happen. So I don't think there's any pressure from the Chamber of Commerce is trying to get this done. But I do think it's important to have some of this in here. I agree with you. I don't want this to take a lot of work for James to have to manage the contractual aspect of it, or anybody else in the staff for that matter. But it would be nice so that we want to, again, the intent of this wasn't to make a list of things that would happen, but to make it clear to the public, because the chamber did use, formally managed the tourism improvement district money, and make it clear with everybody, there was a extra percentage that wasn't part of the transit occupancy tax that was added on, similar to the transit occupancy tax, that went to promote the hotels and tourism in Ojai. That is gone now. As part of that budget, some of the money went to the actual advertising and the things that the Tour Improvement District or the Ojai Visitors Bureau would do, and part of it went to funding the staff that was there. That funding has been removed from the Chamber of Commerce because it's gone. So this is in one way, in a sense, replacing a very tiny portion of what was that funding, and then adding a new set of requirements that are different from the Ojai Tourism District or Visitors Bureau, and making it more what we would call in-house or an outsourced but local economic development individual or liaison. And that's what all these ideas are. And some of the specifics, even when we talked about it, take some of the what would be James's job or James's former job as a deputy city manager off his plate, like dealing with EDC, communicating with some of those things that were direct staff time, as well as some of the consulting ideas that are in here, would take that off the plate at the city.
Okay, well, my,
So Mayor, I have one comment.
okay.
That's the only reason those are in there.
Randy?
As my councilman filibuster for something we're going to pass, but that's okay. The thing that I look at in this agreement is it actually sets some goals and some accountability. And personally, we have talked to the Green Coalition for I don't know how many years about coming back and accounting for the money that we've given them, and coming forward with the goals in the beginning of the year as to how they're going to utilize that money. And so I think any entity that we're going to provide funding to should have some form of a contract that actually clearly states what are the goals and how can we measure them, and when you have to come back and present those measurements. So that's why I believe Mayor, you're the one who strongly asked for something of this nature. I agree with you 100%. I think this is exactly what we had asked for. And I'd like to thank Jamie and Ryan and James for bringing something as concise back to us and also to the public so that they know exactly what our agreement is. And then the pressure is going to be on the chamber to actually come back and tell us, what they achieved and what they didn't, as well as can we see it? So I think it's important, and I'm glad we did it, and I hope we do it with other entities.
Okay, but you feel like this actually, going back to what Ryan was saying, the concern to be sure the public understood what this was about, and my understanding, what is different about this is that this is for the diversification of the economy, not for the promotion of the existing tourist economy. Right. And so it would seem that, if that's the memorandum of understanding we have for the money, the report would have to show how did the economy get diversified as opposed to just simply Visitors Bureau, because that's kind of an active.
I agree with you 100%. Okay. How many people came, who they talked to, what was their outreach, I think was the most important.
Well, I think if you look at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullet points, those all seem to be defining that. Right. When you get below that, it's sort of I won't say business as usual, but the activities that chambers frequently are involved in. And so that's just their ongoing business, but it's the top points that we're really looking to get achieved. Right. And that is such things as identifying, studying industries that could thrive in the Ojai Valley and to bring new jobs and revenue. That'd be great if it could happen. I'm not sure that's a tall task, but if they try it and they produce it, I'd say great. But I was just looking at all the pages on this.
One of the bullets down in the list is broadband, which is an instrument that allows all that to happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but there, I would think.
Well,
that-
there's a number of things on here that I want to make this clear. It was not related to this relationship with the city, but we didn't want to exclude things that were city related that the chamber does, making it seem like they weren't also there. Because again, this was kind of for the digestion of the public to understand as much as any of the council. So things like talking about, Jamie has had this great, I gotta give him a lot of credit. I hope this works out. We'll see what happens. But Jamie's always had this great idea that the city should celebrate, especially during the summer, the pink moment, or during the fall, that there should be kind of this collective effort to have a time and thing. This has nothing to do with really what we're asking about economic development, but we didn't want to not include that since it's something the chamber's working towards doing and is Ojai centric, and it's part of, it's part of our partnership, whether it's related to us giving money to do that. No, we're not really giving money to the chamber to develop a pink moment event, but we are giving them money for economic development, and as part of that, they're adding that service on.
I'd just like to clarify that. Is that going to be a city holiday?
Well, it would every day, yes. You can take each big moment down. But little stuff
Yeah, in
like
this
that.
town, everything's a celebration. You know. I like to celebrate new industry.
Let me just add one more example real quick. The other thing was, we were talking about a parking study. One thing we were thinking about was, wow, we should, even if we do a study, it sure would be nice to have the chamber maybe reach out to its members and ask some questions directly to the membership about some of their experiences with parking and things like that. That has nothing to do with economic development, and the $40,000 isn't really supposed to do that, but as part of our partnership, that's something we'd reach out to the chamber to ask for. So that's why it says participate in a parking study.
Yeah.
Things like that were what we added on here as well.
But it sounds like we're paying for them to do these extra things when in fact we have been partners with them on those things all along. The real stuff is up above there, but,
Very
you know, okay, I don't want to beat it to
Mayor,
death.
one other thing here. Before the, prior to the, what did we get rid of the OTED? But prior to the OTED, the city supported the chamber with contributions.
Right.
I don't know what the history on that is, and I don't know how much, but it doesn't seem like $40,000 is a lot of money to support the chamber if it was doing like-minded things like this in the past.
Why-
And I think that was one of the reasons that the OTED came in, was to give them additional funding. I don't think they took the spirit of that funding and did these things. I think they did more to, like you said, market tourism for the hotels and motels in town. So,
I think they piggybacked on a cost shift where it was kind of like win-win back in aftermath of 2008 when the city budget was going down the drain. And so I guess when I talk about a sustaining membership of a sort for a major partner for the general benefit that they provide to our community, both as a visitors bureau and some of these things that Ryan's mentioning, but as well as encouraging them to focus on what a lot of chambers do, which is to identify businesses and try to bring them to town. So you are correct. I think that it was a way of saying, well, we won't give you any more money, but we'll let you live partially off of the OTED. And so now that that's gone away, there seems to be an argument in favor of a mutual benefit between the city and the chamber for a certain amount of money. I don't know that without some sort of demonstrated success that we want to spend a huge amount of money on. If we're going to do that, we should be doing it. I think the city should do their job and have a real community development effort. I have not seen one since I've been around. But
this would
maybe
be a
this
step forward
idea
to
of
do that.
reaching out and having
Step forward
somebody
to
else.
doing that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Step to doing that.
Exactly. It's another way to do it.
Right.
It's just a question of how much.
Let's say, if there was this council and the community decided that the tourism bureau was no longer the appropriate thing for the city of Ojai, and it had done its job and arguably well of promoting tourism. The extra transit occupancy tax, although it wasn't part of the TOT, it was a little supplement, but we're looking at potentially increasing that back to a similar or the same level. We could take, in a very similar fashion, that increase and allocate it not towards tourism, but towards economic development. And this would be, this is our test to see if this is the type of framework that will work or if we need to do something different. And that's, in the long run, something we can learn from this. In the short term, these services really need to be provided, and even from the time of us passing the budget and talking about this to now, there have been situations where this agreement would have served the city very well in alleviating some problems that have occurred in communication, and what happens over and over again seemingly at the front desk at City Hall. People get information and it doesn't go very well. So this, this is, I think it's essential for all of those other reasons we talked about, but most importantly, this is something we got to do, and we're not doing anything different. This is the only chance we have of making it better. So Jamie, with that, good luck.
Well, we need a vote.
I'd like to hear from Jamie. Jamie,
Okay, yeah.
Jamie, do you have something to add, clarification, what your preference is, or how? Yeah.
I've been following everything everyone has been saying, and I have been listening to everything you've been saying, and I fully agree that we put a lot in so that, as Ryan said, the public really sees exactly what our intentions are. It's not tourist-based, it's really to help the city. I'll be frank, and I think each one of you know this, we have to start. 6 months is going to go by a lot quicker. You have to go out in court and solicit, and it'll be easy for me to demonstrate and show you what we're doing, especially for business development. But I'm not going to say that in 6 months we're going to have so many businesses already here. It's a process, but it's a process that I think we can do well, and working with the city also, because people come to the city oftentimes first. And so even one of the bullet points there of just having materials that make sense is a great starting point in these first 6 months. But then I just want everyone to understand, we went from a year originally to a 6-month trial here, which I think is a good idea, but a lot of these goals are going to be started, and you'll see the metrics and what we're really doing, but the expectations have to be realistic, what we're going to be able to accomplish in 6 months, but I think you'll be very happy with what you see.
And you would be logging both the effort and whatever successes or
It'd be
achievements.
very easy to show you
Right,
some
yeah,
of the 6 months.
Well,
I don't want to get into James having to do too much detail. I think it makes more sense to be able to show you what we've, and you'll see it anyway. So,
Let's
are
vote.
there any other
Wait,
questions while I'm here? Or?
Okay. I still don't understand what the concern, do you still have a concern, or?
Well,
has
I'm
that
just
been
saying that
addressed?
it seems to me that if we're going to do it, and maybe it kind of goes back, I think, to what Randy was saying, that, before there was an OTID, there was some contribution on the part of the city to recognize the benefit to the community as a partnership with our chamber. That went away, and they said, here, you go ahead and live off this other deal, which, I don't know that it was, well, it was skating the edge, the way that was done, and nobody sued, so we're fine. But now the chamber's left with just memberships, and whether or not they've got enough money to sort of stay in business in order to make this extra effort. So I was just thinking, well, maybe we just kind of go back before the OTID. We consider the $40,000 to be the seed money to see whether or not the chamber is capable of doing it. It's a really tough job, but they're willing to try. So that's I just think when you formalize this much, it's really good and it's thorough. But maybe this would be what we would do in January or whenever the report comes back, is to say, this is someone with a proven record who's willing to continue.
Mayor, one quick comment though.
I think structure is better than no structure of these
And
relationships.
what's nice about having
Jamie's okay with that too.
Let's
something
vote.
what's
I
nice
know
about
you, and I'm on your side, James.
Mayor, what's nice about having something like this in place, and you alluded to it earlier, is if Jamie leaves and someone backfills his position, there's already something in writing that you're obligated to do. So there's a format, there's a structure. And then I want to tie that into the OTED, because it's interesting. There was an agreement that there was I think a state-recognized methodology as to how that money was going to be spent through the OTED. I don't think there was ever really a written agreement as to the word tourism and all of these additional impacts that tourism has on a community, that when we were having that discussion, Bill and I were trying to say, set aside money to do this study, set aside money out of that OTED. So now what we're saying is, Chamber, start doing those things with us or for us. And so so this is just an excellent source of a commitment by the Chamber to be a partner with the city And that way, another thing we eliminate is that the city doesn't like business, and businesses can't thrive because the city feels this way. We're in this together. And I think
Yes.
that's the most important thing that comes out of it. Your members see that, and we see your members working with us. So it's what's best for the community.
This was a good exercise anyway, so that both the council and the chamber, we kind of have on paper all of our goals, and I think we're all on the exact same page where we're headed for the city, so.
Let's vote.
Yeah, I have a question of the city attorney. Is it okay if I ask Gail that I vote last? Is that legal?
You can make the request.
It's okay to make the request?
Certainly.
Okay.
The-
Gail, I make the
traditionally,
request,
clerk
I
is-
vote last.
As you know, the clerk rotates on a random basis, but
Yeah.
as long as there's no objection from the rest of the council.
Well, the reason for it to rotate on a random basis is not to be calculating one's vote based on what the other.
Right.
So.
Set the precedent for this request so that in future it's not objected to either. I mean, it seems like it's.
That would be the risk.
I rarely do that. I think I've never done that. But in this case, I feel the need.
The request can be made, the chair chairs the meeting, the decisions of the chair are subject to appeal to the council, so I'll defer it back to the chair.
I don't think that it's a protocol thing, not a chair's discretionary decision as to how we do it. I think you
Need an
do.
extra minute to decide, Susan?
No, I'm
Just wanted to weigh it.
I'm just mulling.
So it should stay on this.
Right, yeah, when it's a 2-2 vote, you become a deal maker, I guess.
I don't think we should change protocol.
Okay,
We should vote as we decide we
Okay.
vote on our principles.
Okay.
That would be more orthodox.
Tell us now how you're going to vote, and then we'll tell you whether you're going to vote last.
No, let's just vote. I mean,
Okay, well,
Well, yes, thank you, Jamie. I mean, we're giving the Chamber of Commerce very little money and a ton of tasks. So this is a little bit overwhelming. But this is what we wanted to do to make sure that there was some clarity in what we're asking so it wasn't too nebulous. And we expect to be able to check a lot of these off when he comes back.
let's vote.
But,
okay, well, I am not opposed to making a contribution to the chamber on the 40. I just don't care for the contract, just so you know when the vote comes, so proceed. Call the roll.
No pressure. Mayor Johnston,
I thought I got to go last. No on the contract. No.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
No.
Councilmember Blatz,
yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Yes.
Hey, okay, motion carries. Congratulations, Jamie.
You have a contract.
I guess it's congratulations.
I mean, what would you want to do in lieu of that? Nothing.
Well,
To do what
it's done.
we used to do. I mean, I acknowledge
Hey, we're
what we used to
done.
do.
Okay, Mayor, what do we?
Let's see, I think we're down. I'll carry this. Okay,
That's it.
okay.
It's so wonderful. 5
done.
past
Okay, we're done.
7.
Bill's adjourned the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.